Are you guys able to see my screen?
Okay.
Excellent. Okay. So welcome everyone. Before we get into our very exciting webinar, I want to take you through a very quick overview of Regenesys Corporate Education. Who is hosting the webinar today? So as a starting point, what we're going to do is just go an overview of Regenesys. So Regenesys, as most of you know, is known as a business school, but we're actually much larger than that. Regenesys has a business school. We also have a corporate education arm, which is whom you are talking to today. We have a non-profit organization that we have created and we sponsor that allows access to education for financially disadvantaged students and have perhaps innovative, trending teaching and learning methods. We have an investment company as well as a talent company that does our recruitment for Regenesys and does global recruitment. We have a health business that supports students and staff, all things health related. Lastly, we have Digital Regenesys, which is an online virtual instructor-led training company that does in-demand training qualifications like AI, data science, and cybersecurity and so forth. Just an overview of some of the customers we've had the privilege of dealing with. I think more than the customers, it speaks to the ability of Regenesys to solve problems across various industries, whether it's in the public space or private space, whether it's in a blue collar or a white collar space, whether it's in software or manufacturing or telecoms or financial services. Regenesys has many feathers in its cap in solving problems across the board. I always say to our customers, if you spent your money on any business school in South Africa, I think it's money well spent. But there must be a reason why you'd want to come to Regenesys. I think one of the main reasons why people enjoy working with Regenesys and studying at Regenesys is our specific module that all our students are subjected to. And in this module, we teach you how to become, or we support you and nurture you on how to become a better human being. And when our shareholders created this business more than 25 years ago, one of the key reasons was how more relevant can that be 25 years later if you look at where we are today as a country. And in this process of holistic human development, we take you through multiple intelligences. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll give you an example. If you look third from the top, line to any religion, but it's a line to a human being having a purpose in life. It's a line to a human being realizing they don't have inhibitions and they can live their full potential and be the best versions of themselves. Whether you are an employee at work, if you give 100% at work, you should give 100% at home. You should be the best employee, the best mom, the best dad, the best sibling, the best community. Ultimately, what we want to do is create thought leaders. Now, leadership is a word that corporates have manipulated and kept for themselves, and it's an exclusive domain of corporates. When you say leadership, you talk about work. But actually, leadership is about community, it's about family, it's about everything, not just the workspace. So when you go through this process, the idea is, and our intention is to create a better human being, a better mom, a better parent, a better sibling, a better employee, a better manager, a better CEO. On the left-hand side is our very innovative teaching and learning methods. Now, flipped classroom, believe it or not, it's not turning the chairs upside down, right? It's coming to the classroom, being prepared, and already understanding the concepts about what the lecturer is going to teach you. So instead of being taught for the first time, you can have insightful, progressive, and intelligent conversations with the teacher or the lecturer or facilitator. We have action learning projects, which are very purposeful and eclectic, because when you go through an action learning project, very difficult to forget what you learned. We have various interactive methodologies that we use to deliver our teaching and learning. And ultimately, we are trying to replicate the whole neural learning process through transformative deep learning. If you can recall as a child, then you'd recall your nursery rhymes and timetables without even thinking about it. That's because your neuro learning pathways were deep then. So what we want to create a behavioral shift. In fact, that's the aim of any training anywhere in the world, and that is to create a behavioral shift. Ultimately, when you leave Regenesys, you leave Regenesys, number one, with the skill set you sought out to achieve, and number two, you become a better human being, and number three, you become an asset to your community and to this world, and number four, you become a conscious leader. And South Africa needs a lot of conscious leaders at the moment. So I'll stop there, and we'll continue onto our panel discussion. So guys, if I can ask you to switch your cameras on and briefly introduce yourself, and I'm not going in any particular order. In fact, I am going in an order, and the order is from left to right. Can I ask Vijay and Naidu to please introduce yourself for 30 seconds, please?
Good day, Kabir. I'm Vijay Naidu, the CEO of the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations. The Quality QCTO is one of the three quality councils in terms of the legislation, which is the National Qualifications Framework. And as the title suggests, and which differentiates us from the other two quality councils, is that our focus is primarily on the occupational qualifications and the trades. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Vijay. Can I ask Elaine to go next, please?
A very good afternoon to you, Kapil, and to your audience today. It is really great to be in this webinar with such an important subject to be discussed. My name is Elaine Brass, and I am the CEO of the Health and Welfare Sector Education and Training Authority, one of 21 SETAs in the country, and we service all sectors. My sector is health and social development and veterinary science. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Can I ask Natalie to go next, please?
Thank you, Kapil. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to the audience. My name is Natalie Nelson. I am the Senior Manager for Education, Training and Quality Assurance at the MICT SETA. Our focus within the MICT SETA specifically is within the media, information technology, advertising, electronics and communication subsectors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And last but not least is Dr. Phileng Yende. Please can I also ask you guys to keep your cameras on for the remainder of this webinar. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Phileng. Dr. Phileng, we seem to be having a challenge. We can't hear what you are saying. Dr. Phileng, we can't hear what you are saying.
Thank you very much. Hear me?
Speak. I can hear you in bits and pieces now. It seems like you are breaking up. Sounds like you've got a connectivity issue. Do you want me to give you a minute while you go offline and then join again whilst I start? I can, but you are breaking up. So let's allow Dr. Phileng to go offline and resolve her technology issues. And we'll start, guys. Are you okay with that? All right. So I'm going to start in the first round of questioning. I'm going to call your name and ask you that question, if it's okay with you, right? In the second and third rounds, you please feel free to answer the questions as you see fit. My first question is, and this is directed to Vijay, why is there a shift from SETA to QCTO? As a business leader, I've worked with SETAs many years. I've done some good work with them and sometimes not so good work, but generally we have aligned and we have a relationship with SETAs. I see these names like Elaine and and Natalie. And these are familiar names to me, even though I don't know you, but I know these names because I see them in emails and so forth. So please explain to us the logic and rationale of the migration from SETA to QCTO. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Kapil, for that question. I think it's a great opening question. I think first and foremost, let me indicate that the transition is not something that we have just thought about recently. In fact, it is captured in legislation. If I could just go back, prior to the promulgation of the National Qualifications Framework Act, the regulation under that act, the sector education training authorities, and SETAs abbreviated, were delegated quality assurance functions, which gave them the status of what is called an ETQA. And that was under the SAQA Act. When the SAQA Act was repealed and replaced by the National Qualifications Act, the Quality Council, which was already prior established under a separate legislation called the Skills Development Act, was then reclassified as a Quality Council, giving it the same status as that of the Council for Higher Education, as well as Umalusi. And in terms of that mandate, the QCTO is then responsible for a sub-framework of the National Qualifications Framework, which will encompass all qualifications, occupational and trade-related. And so the QCTO has to then exercise its mandate over that. And in terms of that mandate and having the full responsibility for quality assurance over that particular qualification sub-framework, it meant that the QCTO has to incrementally and over time take back the functions that were delegated to the SETAs, firstly under SAQA, secondly under the QCTO itself. Admittedly, when the QCTO was first established, it was established but did not have the necessary funding regimes. It still does not have the full funding regime. It did not have the structures necessary. So the functions were still delegated to the ETQAs. And so there is this now shift gradually to move these quality assurance functions to the QCTO, so that the QCTO is then able to respond adequately to its mandate as specified in the NQF Act. And that's speaking about the entire quality assurance value chain. Now, I think it's important, and to make this point, Kapil, that it's not about taking over what the SETAs do. Definitely not. I think it's about two levels of engagement. It's one is what is quality assurance, which QCTO is responsible for, and secondly, what will be the activities that the SETAs will then continue with. So, the shift is actually through these pieces of legislation, and as well as subsequent legislation. We got the white paper that was promulgated in 2013, which raised some critical issues pertaining to the quality assurance, not only in this sector, but across all of the sectors in South Africa. And so, it's incumbent upon the QCTO as the custodian then of that framework to ensure that the necessary quality assurance is in place. And the transition from SETAs to QCTO must be seen in that context. I can elaborate further, but I think maybe that suffices for now.
That's fine.
So it suggests, let me end with this. It suggests a well-coordinated working relationship between the QCTO and the SETAs. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. I've got a follow-up question, but I'll circle back to you just now. I'm going to ask, Elaine, what happens, what are the key roles that you will play as a SETA going forward once this migration happens?
Thank you very much for that question. And as you know, Mr. Naidu has indicated that the QCTO and SETAs will work together. And in fact, we are a quality partner of the QCTO. And in that, I know that the HW SETA, as with all the other SETAs, have a service level agreement with the QCTO. And under the service level agreement, as the CEO mentioned, is there are mandated functions that the SETA must carry out. But we carry out these functions in conjunction with the QCTO, so that for the service provider, for the public out there, it should be seamless in terms of the quality that is given to them with regards to the qualifications, development, registrations, and assessments that follow after that. So in terms of the functions that we would carry out as SETAs mandated by the QCTO, in conjunction with the various acts that prevail, is of course we would support certification to a certain extent on legacy qualifications. We will do qualifications development. So we are now in this period where we have to convert all the legacy qualifications into occupationally developed qualifications, and I'm sure that will come out as to why we've gone that route. And then, of course, we assist the QCTO with systems in place to register learners, to keep a database of accredited skills development providers and so forth, as well as various reporting to the QCTO. We also assist the QCTO with site validations and also assisting them with final assessments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. Before I go on to Natalie, I see some of the audience have already have their hands up. Guys, if you have any questions, maybe at the end, if we have time, you can type it in the chat box where it's called, I think it's called Q&A, but we won't be taking live questions as it stands. Natalie, you know, we are used to learnerships and we're used to the structure of learnerships, and it's almost second nature to us. Now, when we have delved into the details of migrating certain learnerships into the QCTO, we find that there is a misalignment sometimes, and it doesn't always fit like a glove. So what happens to learnerships? What happens to the notional hours and, you know, this 12-month learnerships? Now QCTO's got shorter periods and longer periods. You know, how can you explain that? Can you explain us as business owners? What do we do? As an example, if you are somebody who does a Gen 5 often, right? What is the comparative QCTO qualification? And maybe just enlighten us on how we go about actually migrating our qualifications.
Thanks for the question, Kapil. So just in terms of learnerships, we have, or DHET has provisioned for the registration of occupational qualifications as learnerships, and I'm sure you and the audience are aware of that. Firstly, so we do register these occupational qualifications with DHET, and obviously business owners can then register to implement these learnerships. Now, correctly saying that it doesn't necessarily fit like a glove. We have experienced some challenges, particularly with the longer qualifications. And these are the qualifications that probably have over 500 credits. So in terms of the implementation of that, we look at an integrated learning approach, much like you would have under the legacy qualifications. We still make provision for the split in terms of these qualifications, which previously with historical qualifications looked at the theoretical aspect, some simulation as an aspect, and then ultimately the workplace component. And I think the structure then of the occupational specifically makes credence for that already. If you have a look at the knowledge modules, that would be equivalent then to the theoretical aspect that we would have covered under the historical qualifications. We then also have a look at the component of the practical outcomes that's still part of the simulation, which can then be integrated as well into the theoretical component, and then the provisioning for the workplace component for that implementation. So the implementation may take a little bit longer based based on the fact that, the total number of credits is significantly higher than you would in the previous qualifications or the historical qualifications. But there is allowance in terms of the implementation because we need to cover, of course, all of the credits and, technically speaking, the notional hours, the hours attributed to actually understanding, gaining competence, and being able to assess against those outcomes.
And it's an obvious question, and I'm sure the audience is asking this anyway. What happens to 12H?
I didn't get that. What happens there?
To 12H.
Yeah, that's a tricky question, Kapil, and I think we're still trying to navigate through that. At this point in time, we are working closely with the QCTO to kind of give direction around this as well in this relationship. And definitely, we would then communicate this once we have a solid direction.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to park that comment of 12H and I'll come back to Vijay later. I want to go to Dr. Feleng. If you've sorted out your issues, Dr. Feleng, let us know. I have a question for you.
Certainly, thank you very much.
Okay, so
Can you hear me now?
yeah, I'm just going to ask you the question, Dr. Feleng, and let's see how that goes. If we can hear you clearly, great. If we can't hear you clearly, then unfortunately I will have to move on. But you can switch your video off because one of the audience members advised us to put the camera off because there are connectivity issues throughout the country. So I don't mind if you switch your camera off to try and help your voice.
Yeah.
The question I have for you is, what are some of the what are some of the roles that industry stakeholders can play in supporting you? Because there's one stakeholder, the SETAs, and there's another stakeholder, the QCTO. But when I look at it, I see that as two internal players. You guys are from the same family, right? But then there's various other stakeholders like business, right? And other education companies. What are the roles we should be doing and playing to ensure that we support you in this process? Because ultimately, we are perhaps the second largest stakeholder outside of the student.
No, thank you very much for the question. I think it's important. I had some glitch there, but I'll get right into it. I'm representing FPNM SETA. We've got 13 subsectors that we are serving. Business plays a critical role in the current transition. As you know that while SETAs derive or get the mandate from the department, we do get the funding through the department from business. Now, that therefore makes business an absolutely critical stakeholder that must then be enrolled in this particular process. The role that I believe that industry then needs to play is to be active. So what is happening currently, most of the SETAs do have, actually all of us, we do have the stakeholder engagement sessions where we have got roadshows to communicate the work that we're doing as SETAs. We communicate the work that we do around mandatory grant, discretionary grant, but also we communicate the transition. For an example, in my SETA, we have got weekly sessions where we engage with our stakeholders across the board on issues that specifically relate to the transition. And the rationale for that is to make sure that no individual company or stakeholder is left behind. We understand and believe that the contribution that comes from business is important. Remember that while we're talking about the transition to occupationally directed qualifications, these are qualifications that are primarily led and informed by business. So business has to be actively involved in putting forward their expectations in relation to the transition. But also, when we communicate with business, I think where we are requesting information for realignment, new occupational qualifications, I think it's important that then business comes on board to sort of provide that information, because that information then becomes important information that gets communicated to all to develop all these occupational qualifications that we are migrating to. So the role that business must play should be extremely active, because should they miss this boat, then it's going to affect the manner in which business is conducted. I strongly believe in transformation. I'm an activist when it comes to that. And I've always said that skills development is the backbone of every successful organization. Therefore, my understanding with that would then be that business should be rally behind the transition. We need to understand what their fears are, their expectations are. I can tell you right now that we've got a very good relationship with QCTO. We're working together. We're putting our heads together to say, how do we make sure that this transition is seamless? So it's not going to be easy, but I think under the leadership of QCTO, we are getting things right. So industry should be actively involved, come on board, give us input, and let's see how we can best respond to your maybe concerns and areas where you are misunderstanding the transition. Give us those new occupational qualifications that you know that when registered finally, they'll make a difference in your business. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Philip. I've finished the first round of questions, and I'm looking at the chat Q&A. There's like we are inundated with questions, and I'm at a crossroads here. Should I just take the audience questions only, or go through my questions? And what I've decided to do is I'm going to do a bit of both. So, Vijay, I'm going to come back to you, and I've got two questions. And if you can try and keep your answer as brief as possible, because we want to try and get through a lot of questions, right? My first question is around this whole migration. You explain the logic. That logic is very aligned to, like you said, the CHE and Umalusi. My question to you guys in the public service sector, in education, surely this is something we could have said 10 years ago. We could have done this 10 years ago. Why are we doing it now? First question. Second question is a follow-up question from Natalie's answer. Can you enlighten us on the funding and align to the duration of these qualifications, specifically the 12 age? So those are the two questions, and please try and keep it as short as possible so we can get through the audience's questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kabir. Yeah, I can only be long-winded around these things. Very, very briefly, why are we doing this now? Kabir, let me just indicate that this started more than 10 years ago. And unfortunately, the circumstances that prevail now are the same circumstances and arguments that prevailed twice before, which then forced the arm of the minister to renew those qualifications for 5-year terms. And so it's been attempted before, but due to the same issues, some of the same issues being raised now, the minister extended and extended. Now, I'm sure, Kapil, you would agree with me that if we have a qualification or a learnership, whatever you want to call it, that was developed in pre-2009, certainly the question of its relevance in the current context in 2024 comes into play with the advancements in technology, with the way the world is changing. So I want to put that up front. Let me say the current process that we're engaged in didn't start last week or last month. In December of 2020, the minister gazetted the ministerial determination, which in that determination clearly articulated the transition that historically or pre-2009 qualifications would expire in June 2023, which was last year already. Last enrollments will be 2024, June coming up, and with a teach-out period 2027. which means that we had 3 years to develop occupational qualifications to respond to the issues that you raised. Now, yes, SETAs have aligned, and we've had to use a methodology of prioritization. Where there were pre-2009 qualifications that were dormant, which means they had no learner enrollments, etc., those were actually deactivated. But those that had some value, all it needed was for it to be reworked into the format of the occupational qualification, but bringing in the experts from industry so that these qualifications could then be upgraded to meet the current demands and not necessarily when they were developed at that stage. So certainly, I don't think it is something new on the table. I think we all have a part to play in the slow response to actually ensuring that by now, we would have had this all done and dusted. And then very quickly, the issue around the 12H, in my understanding, is the issue around the tax break. And in my understanding, and I stand to be corrected, but I think I'm fairly positive about this one, was that it was the discretion of the minister at that stage who granted a tax break, which is due to come to an end now in 2024. I think it's April. And that was to address a particular issue of appeal. The tax break was meant to try to improve the employment rates. It was trying to address the unemployment rate, which at that stage was sitting at 33%. We know that right now we're sitting with it at 40-odd%. Depending on how you calculate it. But my understanding is that in the last budget vote speech given by the minister, he did indicate that that tax break will be extended. So, if it comes to that particular issue, that's my view on it, and I may stand to be corrected, but that is my understanding around the tax break that was issued. Thanks, Kabir.
Okay. Thanks, Vijay. So guys, we've done the first round of questioning, and I'm going to ask the question and you can choose if you feel like answering it. Please shout out to raise your hand or just say, I don't mind taking a stab at this. And I'm looking this way because on this screen I've got questions from the audience and I'm filtering out the questions. So I have a question here from Dom Helsa. Can you explain to us the new processes? And I'm not paraphrasing, I'm rephrasing his question. Can you explain to us the processes going forward with ATR and WSPs? How will that work? What role will the QCTO play? What role will the SETA play? So anyone who wants to answer that, please. Don't let me answer it.
So in terms of the sorry, Natalie, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Dr. Philen, that's cool.
So just in terms of the white paper, there's clarification of roles and responsibilities. The SETAs will still be responsible for the WSPs and HRs. The business will be working still directly with the SETAs in terms of the submission of all those documents, and the disbursement process will still be conducted or managed as per the current status quo. So in as far as I'm aware, speaking from the white paper itself, that particular responsibility still sits within the SETA space. And that would also then include stakeholder engagement in terms of employer and learner placements. That would be a responsibility that SETAs will then be driving specifically. I hope that is then responding to the question.
Thank you, Dr. Philen. Natalie, do you want to add to that?
I think I've been covered by Dr. Philen, thanks.
Okay, excellent. Our next question, and I think it's a few people have asked this question, and I also have it on my list, is what happens to the assessors and moderators that have been aligned to certain learnerships? And we know and the migration, what happens to them afterwards?
Thanks, Kapil. I'll take that question. So just in terms of the occupational programs or qualifications, we still have an output linked to then assessing of learner competence at the knowledge and at the practical level as well as at the workplace level. But critically, where they come into play is then at what we call the external integrated summative assessment centers. So the expertise are required once the learners have received what we call their statements of results through the knowledge, practical, and workplace component, and then gain entry into then the final external integrated summative assessment exam. These assessors and moderators are then allocated to these ESA centers where they fulfill the functions and the roles and responsibilities around being subject matter experts for the occupational qualifications that they prove competence against, have been registered for, and have oversight of the process there. Moderators similarly also continue with the process of oversight, process of endorsement of assessments that have happened at the ESA center level. So they are still involved in the process. The naming convention, however, is somewhat different within the occupational model because we move then from assessors and moderators specifically into subject matter experts. Thanks.
Thanks, Nancy.
Kapil, can I take a bite of that one as well?
Please go ahead.
I agree fully with what Natalie has said, and I think I just want to emphasize that the assessors and moderators still have a space in how things are unfolding. But I want to underscore what Natalie said. The basis now is not unless the your qualification as the assessor or moderator. It is the underlying expertise that you have in that particular area. And why that is becoming important, and I think this is what needs to be understood, is that under the previous qualifications, a learner's competence was assessed through a portfolio of evidence. And that's where your assessors and moderators came in quite significantly in terms of assessing the portfolios and then moderating the portfolios. The assessment regime, by virtue of the white paper, has asked that the system be shifted to a more nationalized assessment. And I think that's the point that Natalie made. The ISA, which is an external integrated summative assessment through which the learner has to display the competences associated with the qualification. And that is where we need the subject matter experts who are knowledgeable in that particular area, both to help to design the instrument called the ISA, and then as well as to do the evaluation of that ISA so the learner can be declared competent or incompetent. So this shift, and a fundamental shift is away from the portfolio of evidence, which could be argued to be very subjective, depending on the number of assessors and moderators that we used, to respond to a direct issue in the white paper for post-schooling education training for a more centralized system. But certainly when you talk about a more centralized system, please don't think about it as, the matric exams and things like that. The spaces are completely different. Thanks, Kapil.
Thank you, Vijayan. I think we're inundated with questions and I'm finding it difficult to keep up with all the questions here. But we also have a very large audience, and the audience has grown significantly since when we started. I'm also filtering out the questions because some of the answers are available. So if you're asking questions like that, I'm not going to use this opportunity to put forward your question. But ones where I know are tricky, I'm going to bring those ones to you. And there's a question from a Samantha Tim. And she says, there are some legacy programs that are aligned to legislative requirements in various sectors that have not been addressed in skills programs as yet. How will we proceed come the 1st of July 2024 if they are not in place?
Let me take a bite of that again, Kapil.
I'm looking at you, Vijay, to say perhaps leave that. Because I know we had a discussion with you as well, and there is a process that is underway which we wouldn't want to communicate as yet because you did it. So I'm sure you can then take this one away. Thank you. Yeah, sure.
So, Kapil, Dr. Yende is correct that there are some of these programs that are linked to regulations, and we actually formulating a special category of that in terms of how we address it in terms of the realignment. But let me just say that we've come to appreciate that these exist under various pieces of legislation. So we've engaged in terms of a particular set of programs that fall under the mandate of the Department of Labor. And it's been a long process, almost 2 years of discussion between QCTO and the Department of Labor, which resulted in a decision being taken on how we move forward. And I think it's I don't know whether it was the latter part of last year or the early part of this year, that there was a joint communique between the QCTO and the Department of Labor that was issued for the providers that are operating in that space, where those regulated programs that fall under the Department of Labor. It clearly articulated how we deal with those particular programs, and those related to your issues of health and safety, workers at heights and those kind of regulatory programs. But as we move further into this now, we see that there are other regulatory frameworks from various departments, if I want to put it that way, that we will also have to look at. And we've had engagements already with the Department of Transport in terms of the railway regulator, obviously in terms of the health sector, that's quite highly regulated. QCTO has a MOU with the Pharmaceutical Council. We are now seeking discussions with the Nursing Council and the like, so that we don't want to duplicate work, and QCTO is not arguing that we're the experts in everything. So where it needs an MOU as an overarching mechanism to allow these programs to continue as regulatory programs for the purpose of licensing individuals, in particular occupations or trades, that is what we would do. But as Dr. Yende said, we are talking to the SETAs who have oversight over other aspects of regulated programs, and we will shortly be providing advice to the minister in terms of how we move forward on those particular ones. Thanks.
Thanks, Vijay. I'm looking at the questions here, and a very common theme is what happens to those learnerships existing? They haven't actually started any process with QCTO, and the expiry date is now upon us. What happens to those learnerships? How do we continue to run them? And can we still get our maximum points on these learnerships that have an expiry date?
Yeah, I think on the learnerships that have got expiry dates, we're quite clear that we need the recruitment of learners and registration of learners against these qualifications to then be done before the deadline, until there is, like Vijay indicated, or unless if there is any communication that may come out between now and end of June. But as we speak today, we are working as per the legislation that was communicated a couple of years ago. The deadline remains 30th of June. And those learnerships are active until the legacy learnerships are actually active until the 30th of June. And stakeholders are advised to recruit against those learnerships between now and the 30th of June and load the learners onto the systems so that they are then recognized and they can be able to be in the system. I think the output or throughput would then be of such learners. Those that will be registered before end of June will then be 2027. So So they're still valid, but until the 30th of June, unless if there's an advice that may come in between now and June. But again, there's no promise. We have nothing. So far, we're just communicating. Should there be anything that needs to be communicated beyond today as to what's going to happen, I think the QCTO as the leader in this area would then advise us, and there will be a unique and single communication that would then go out to stakeholders, should there be any change. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Filling. And there's a follow-up question that also seems to be trending on the Q&A box, is what happens to those historical qualifications that are not yet available on the QCT? How do we handle these going forward?
Thanks, Kapil. So I'll take that question. SETAs are mandated under the revoking SLA to have these qualifications realigned into then occupational qualifications. One of the key factors that is obviously looked at is the relevance of the qualification, and then secondly, the number of learners that have been enrolled in this historical qualification. SETAs have actually prioritized against the qualifications that have the highest throughput, whether it is enrollment or even certification. So in terms of the qualifications that have not yet been developed, they are in the process of being developed. There is a QCTO process that we follow, where we certainly apply for these qualifications to either be realigned into full qualifications. If there is already a parent qualification, a part qualification or skills program, and the process is then followed in and through QCTO with a qualification, or it's evaluated, we receive the outcome of the application, and then we can commence with the process. So the lack of a replacement qualification does not necessarily mean that the process of development has not yet begun. So we advise that you engage with the relevant SETA around the process of replacement of this qualification and when it can be expected to be registered, if it is going to be registered on the NQF. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. I think there's a follow-up question here about, it's actually a very simple question, and maybe this is for all those guys who don't understand. The question is, how do we apply to the QCTO for the migration of the qualifications? So I think most of us know how, but maybe just give the audience the benefit of the doubt and tell us the steps that we need to follow. Whoever wants to answer that, please go ahead. Whilst you are doing that, we are going to take a 2-minute ad break, and I'm going to show the audience and yourselves 2 more slides. And I'm going to prepare that whilst this answer is being given by anyone. So the question is, how do we apply to move our qualifications onto the QCT?
Kapil, let me take that one quickly.
Sure.
So this is where the significance of business comes into play, industry. So it is driven by industry needs. So when the industry has identified that there is a need for an occupationally developed qualification, they then approach the SETA, and then in conjunction with the QCTO, we apply for this particular qualification to be developed. Once we get approval from the QCTO, then we undergo the process of the development of the qualification. So really the importance is the inclusion of industry, the inclusion of subject matter experts, and the formation of qualifications that is to the industry needs, and also then allows this alignment between what the qualification is and the job that this qualification is meant to fill. So there's really a great alignment between those two. Thank you, Kapil.
Thank you, Elaine. I appreciate that. I'm going to quickly share my screen again, and maybe it allows you guys to have a breather as well. So let me know when you can see my screen. Okay, excellent. So I just wanted to continue the presentation I started earlier, and Regenesys Corporate Education has a range of products and services that it offers in this space. starting on the left-hand side, we actually designed our products and services around the BE scorecard. And, it's given all these changes, we also need to adjust. But on the left-hand side, we have a range of undergraduate and postgraduate qualifications that is normally associated with the business school. Typically our customers, would use that for bursary requirements. I spoke to you earlier about digital Regenesys, which does online training qualifications. Our biggest seller is customized solutions. So customers, when we go to customers, they often want us to tailor a solution that perhaps doesn't exist at the moment for them. Right? It could be finance, it could be something on sales, it could be even something on emotional intelligence. It could be even customizing an undergrad or a postgrad degree for a cohort of 20 or 30 people. When it comes to customized solutions, there's no limit in terms of what we can do. Obviously, we offer a range of learnerships and QCTO qualifications. I think we're currently going through our audits at the moment, so thank you guys for that. And, we do a range of short courses and masterclasses. I think the beginning of last year, we had a masterclass in ChatGPT when it was 2 months old. And then we had subsequent various webinars like this one and masterclasses. Last week, we had a masterclass on women in leadership and in empowerment. So we continue to give back as well. And these are not charged for the short courses or the masterclasses. We're actually a global business. So Regenesys operates in multiple countries. And I'll tell you what the value of that is. The value of Regenesys being in so many countries, it comes into our teaching and learning because our faculty get together and they are able to communicate with each other best practices and adoptions across the globe. So it's not just a South African perspective, there's various perspectives. These are all our accreditations and associations, but some of our very interesting and in-demand qualifications, customized programs. We have a range of management programs for new, middle, and senior managers, international leadership programs. We have a professional communications boot camp, which is facilitated by Jeremy Banks. And here they teach you how to give the best keynote of your life, how to speak clearly, how to communicate properly, but most importantly, how to handle the media and the crisis. Some of the other courses we have is around finance, and there's various levels of finance that we offer. And we have a commercial law element of courses that allows businesses to understand various elements around contracting and negotiating and environmental and social governance and so forth. And, we have, this is very popular and in demand. Negotiating is not sales. Sales is one thing and negotiating is another thing. So when you make a sale, you still have to negotiate. And when you negotiate, you still have to contract. So these are all different elements that we offer. And we find that companies love to understand more on this. We have some very innovative programs, such as managing the different generations in the workplace. Many of you don't know, but the baby boomers' last year of employment, in theory, if they were 65, would have been last year. So the Gen Xers are the oldest in employment at the moment. And we have a women in leadership course, which is very innovative and interesting. It involves equine psychology, which is the science of horses. And, it's a very empowering course that teaches you to embrace the moment. And if you want to know more, you can contact us at via our website or via our email. But I'm going to stop there and go back to the webinar. Hopefully, we've had a chance to regroup. And I'm going to go back to the questions that I've got from the audience, and they have just increased in number. So, there's a question here of extending the registration dates if we don't meet our deadlines. So there's expiry dates as well, and there's registration dates. So my question to you guys is there a possibility that we can get support in the form of extension of expiry and registration dates? I think maybe Vijay, if you can go for that one.
Thanks. Sorry, my camera's up. Thanks for that question. I think at the moment there's intense work being done between the QCTO and the SETAs, as indicated by the preender. And in terms of that, we are mapping the progress made to date, the current status of where some of these programs might be in the development process, as well as SETAs have required of the industry to indicate for those that kind of have not been touched as yet, where the priorities would be. And I think that is what Dr. Yende said. For now, the status quo remains. We will then have to look at what is the quantum of these programs that are probably still requiring attention. And at the end, we will then have to advise our principals in terms of, options in terms of the way forward. I think it must be just clearly articulated here that these decisions do not necessarily lie with the QCTO or the SETAs. It's obviously, we are guided by a ministerial determination. And so we will provide the department and the minister with the relevant information so that he applies his mind to that. So at the moment, I'm sure industry, is being inundated with calls from the SETAs because we want to have a very good view of what is the current status across, the 21 SETAs, which will inform any decision that will be taken post 2024. So, I'd be very careful not to want to create any expectations on this group, except to say that there's intense work behind the scenes. And not just SETA and the QCTO, it's SETA, QCTO, SAQA, because they are eventually, custodians over the entire framework, and we will then advise the principals accordingly.
Thank you, Vijay. Is there an email address or a contact number that the guys can get to that can perhaps service these types of queries efficiently and effectively? The question is that, Vijay,
yeah,
do you have...
The QCTO has a direct info email address. You can just check on the website and that would link you. And I think, I won't speak for the other SETAs, but certainly QCTO does have that. And then we will take those questions into discussion during our bilateral meetings with the SETAs. And I'm sure the SETAs are doing the same. Thanks.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, no, can I just chip in there?
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Philip. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think sports one, communications with QCTO is important, but I think also business should also make use of the SETAs, because then there's going to be a focused approach in terms of paying attention to your needs and all of that. So let us still also make use of that channel, because that channel is important. It's focusing on specified subsectors, and my assumption would then be that the response might then be faster, but there will still be that alignment between SETAs and QCTO. Thank you very much. Perhaps if there's an email that has a query of any sort, going to direct it to QCTO, if perhaps the stakeholder could then also just include the respective or relevant SETA to that communication. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Philin. This question is specifically for MICT SETA. So naturally, it's yours. End user is a major seller for us. When is MICT SETA going to have end user computing at QCTO?
Thanks, Kapil. So that is a priority qualification for us, and as such, we have already realigned that qualification. The view from the MICT SETA has been that you, in terms of an occupation, you would never have someone be an end user computing specialist. So rather, we've looked at the qualification, and we have then developed skills programs at the basic, intermediate, as well as then the advanced level. So those qualification or those skills programs have been submitted to the QCTO. They are currently under evaluation, and our understanding, the feedback that we've received from QCTO is that they should be available before the end of June.
Okay, thank you. A lot of questions again around assessors and moderators. So the question has been answered earlier. Another theme that I'm picking up, and Vijay, it's again directed, it's going to be directed at you, is capacity. There are questions around the capacity of the QCTO. Now, I think more specifically, the question is aligned to the fact that every SETA has got its own capacity, right? And generally are well capacitated in most instances. And now the QCTO is one body. Now, how can you explain to us how are you going to capacitate or have capacitated yourself to service this massive industry and all the stakeholders there?
Thanks, Kapil. I anticipated that one. Let me be upfront. Capacity constraints will remain with us for a long time. And on this platform, I would also articulate that the QCTO is not yet adequately funded to fulfill the mandate. Hence, the SLAs, or service level agreements, which was previously referenced to by Ms. Ross from SWCETA, that in order to manage this, and I think we have to move away from this perception that was created a few years ago, and that was before the SETAs actually licenses were extended by the minister. In that period, there was a lot of uncertainty as to, is the QCTO going to take over all of this ETQA functions from the SETAs, etc. So I think it has shifted significantly from that thought, and I think we need to then move ourselves from that frame of mind to the paradigm that exists right now. It's one of a cooperative relationship between the SETAs and the QCTO, and that is primarily because the major portion of the skills levy still go to the SETAs, and so the funding to some extent still lies with SETAs to execute many of these functions. The QCTO, with its income that's derived from that SETA, exercises the quality assurance of those processes that are undertaken by the SETAs, which was the gap previously. So QCTO is just coming in at that level of providing a quality assurance layer over what the SETAs are doing. And we all have to understand that it isn't that, these things are going to be moved away from the SETAs anytime soon. The long and short of this appeal is that there is just no money in the system to facilitate this. And let me also be brave enough to say that I think we've learned this before. Taking out TVET colleges from 150 odd, bringing them into 50 TVET colleges, we just created bigger institutions, but that did not have any significant impact. I think I would be very careful that the QCTO also is not seen in that light. We just create this one huge monster, if I may use that word, and which may be set up for failure. So I think we are on the right path where we have these service level agreements with the SETAs so that there's a shared and agreed roles and responsibilities. And in that way, we would uplift the quality. But in a nutshell, resources still remain a major constraint, not only within QCTO and the SETAs, but across the board in general. And we all know that in our current context in the country, there isn't just money that is being made available. We've got to work within what we have. Thanks, Kapil.
Thank you, Vijay. I see time is up, but there are so many questions here. I want to extend the session by half an hour. Is everyone of the panelists okay with that? Or do you have pressing commitments? Okay, we're good. The other theme I'm picking up here, guys, is around the BE scorecard and the impact on the BE scorecard. So to give you one specific one, and as an anonymous attendee, what changes are to come to the BE scorecard to affect these changes, which is the move over to the QCTO? Companies can't spend on a program that is 240 credits, for example, and then have learners spend 2 years, but yet only claim, when they say claim, they're talking about the allowance for 1 year. So can somebody enlighten us on that point?
All right, I'll take a bite at it. I don't see anybody going for it. Again, here, Kapil, there's no definitive answers. But as I'm sitting on this platform right now, my team is having a meeting with the department around these triple BEE and with SETAs in terms of that. But I think I must just indicate to people participating on the platform that if you take a careful reading of what currently exists, you could claim against your occupational qualifications and your part qualification to skills programs. But certainly it would become much more explicit in terms of what might be the outcome of the engagements that we're having with the commission, the Triple B Commission, in terms of occupational qualifications. But Kapi, let me just also indicate that the mischief, if I want to use that word here, is this definition of a learnership. And if you look at the definition of a learnership, it includes an apprenticeship, it includes an internship. It's an all-encompassing terminology that's used. And the only reason is because it's captured that way in other legislation in order for access to the funding. So in terms of whether it's occupational qualification and apprenticeship, the funding regime still remains there. And as I think as articulated by Natalie earlier, that these the SETAs do apply for these qualifications to be recognized as learnerships. And in terms of legislation, again, that is the responsibility. The Director General of the department is the registrar for learnerships. And so all these qualifications are submitted to the department to be registered as a learnership. And then it's allocated a learnership number. And, it's then the companies that can then continue with that using that learnership number.
Thank you, Vijay. The next theme of questions that I'm seeing here is around the proposed costing and fees that will be charged by the QCTO. And it seems to be a question that's popped up a lot. And the fee that's going around is 6,000 Rand per accreditation. Is there a comment you want to make on that, Vijay?
Kapil, it's strange that debate is in the public frame already. It's an internal discussion. It was tabled at our board meeting for discussion just last week. It has been discussed. And so the input of council, and we've taken, because of the way our council is constituted, we have business represented, we have labor represented, we have community represented. And so, those views have to be taken into consideration. And then we will then look at what is the most likely fee that will be implemented. But let me just say that it has the discussion is there, but there's no set time yet for implementation. If we're looking at it, the system's got to get adequate, timing in terms of doing this, making provision for it. So yes, it's on the table, but there is no the agreement around the 6,000 or whatever isn't there as yet. But it is a point that's being discussed. I just find it strange that it has found its way into the public domain already.
A few questions here. But but I think you made a point earlier. You said there's an alignment to the way the CHE operates and the way the Umalusi operates, right? And my understanding is that there is a charge. It is an accepted charge when you apply for an accreditation and you come for an audit and so forth. It's an acceptable practice. It's not out there. And my experience with the other bodies is that that's what typically happens. So just a comment on that. Again, I see there's a few questions asking me to repeat the question on the GenMan 5 and the alignment on QCTO. And I think that was one of the first questions that we had asked Natalie. So if you can just, I'm seeing like 6 of these questions here. If you can just repeat that process. We have a GenMan 5. It's a tried and trusted learnership. We love running it for our customers. Our customers love running it. There's value in it as well. Now we go to the QCTO and we're looking down the list. That's a 12-month qualification. It's X number of credits and so forth. And we get our tax allowance, blah, 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 blah. We go down the list of QCTO. where do we find the match, or how do we align and make sure that we have a similar quality qualification that gives us and the customer and the student the same benefits?
Thanks, Kapil. So I think I'd like to start with the first protocol of your engagement would then be with the relevant SETA. So the SETA is the custodian for the qualification, and that would be Services SETA, to understand whether an equivalent qualification has been developed under the occupational framework. It could be that there is a qualification, but it's developed as a part qualification from a parent qualification. So there may be a generic qualification that's already sitting as an occupational qualification, and of course, then this has been realigned into a part qualification. So you would start there. If this has not necessarily been done, it would be again engaging with the relevant SETA on actually applying to have this qualification realigned into an occupational qualification. Important things to note when applying and when engaging with the SETA is research around the international and local compatibility of the qualification. Clearly understanding where students who may come out of these qualifications can articulate into. So is it vertical, is it horizontal, is it diagonal articulation? What kind of credits could they accumulate over this period that they could carry into another qualification, etc. So that is the engagement that would need to happen at a SETA level. Once that is concluded on the SETA, then starts the process of applying for the development of an occupational qualification or the realignment or the replacement of an occupational qualification. And the process unfolds in terms of, and I think Elaine covered it quite well, with the 6 pillar stakeholders that includes higher education institutions, unions, universities, TVET colleges, industries, subject matter experts, skills development providers who all come together to develop these qualifications. Critical to note, we cannot develop qualifications in isolation of subject matter experts and the industry. We need the skill, we need the competency, we need to understand the alignment between what industry needs in relation to the qualification, so that we are not building white elephants, but we actually have qualifications that meet industry demand.
Thank you, Natalie. I've got a very interesting question here, but a very short one. I assume that this question has got its nuances to it. And the question is, because it's a body, what happens to bodies like NAM, which is the National Artisan Moderation Body, in terms of migration and maintaining quality through the migration of the qualifications?
I'll take that. It directly relates to QCTO. So if you have to go back to the white paper, you would see that there's a clause inserted in the white paper that the National Artisan Moderating Body will be incorporated into the QCTO at the appropriate time. So that's a discussion that's ongoing. However, in the interim, NAM, National Artisan Moderating Body, is an assessment quality partner of the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations. What that means is that any trade that is being offered, NAM continues to exercise the oversight they have over that as per their previous mandate. And they would then submit to the Quality Council the information that we require in order for the certificates to be issued. Now, the issue of the certificates is just not a process that happens at the end as a kind of a rubber stamp. So in the value chain of the apprenticeships, the providers have to be accredited accordingly. NAM does the evaluation, QCTO does the accreditation. When it comes to the assessments, or the trade centers, now called the assessment centers, these are also done with NAM, but also with the SETAs, because a lot of these trades rest under a number of the SETAs, and that's where the expertise lies. So, the accreditation would depend on that. And again, the center is accredited by the QCTO for the new occupational qualifications. Where they do exist currently for the legacy qualifications, that remains in place. But NAMP at the end, whether it be the old trades or the ones that are now being offered in terms of the new occupational qualifications, have to submit the evidence to the QCTO in the form required by the QCTO, and that will be everything, including the contract, the assessments, who did the assessments, who moderated, the entire process. We put it through our evaluation process, and on the basis of that, the learner is issued a certificate. So at the moment, NAMP is an entity under the Department of Higher Education and Training, and so we have an MOU with them as an assessment quality partner to feed into this whole value chain. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Vijay. I appreciate that. We've once again come almost to the end. I'm going to ask each one of you to perhaps summarize from your point of view where we are at the moment, and maybe some advice for our audience and stakeholders. So if I can just start with you, Elaine. In closing, what do you have to say, and then we'll take it to the next step.
Thank you very much, Kapil. In terms of the transition that we've been speaking about today, it is vitally important for us to undergo this transition, because it does talk about quality at the end of the day, relevance and responsiveness to the needs of the sector. And we are going in that fashion. So we need to support this transition. It will be good for both higher education and training, as well as business. I see there are so many questions in the chat box. I have also opened up, or I am offering any questions related to this particular subject to come through the HWC chat. We do have a stakeholder liaison person that can actually assist and direct as well, especially with regards to any stakeholders in the health and social development sector. Thank you, Kapil.
Thanks, Elaine. Dr. Philen, if you can maybe summarize your thoughts and advice.
Thanks, Kapil. At my side, I want to also have
maybe just keep your camera off. Keep your camera off, Dr. Philen, because we can't hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah, my camera is just really bad. Is it better now, Kapil?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Wonderful. So from my side, I would like to thank you for the opportunity for us to engage business on this transition. We as FNM SETA have got dedicated days and time that we have set aside to ensure that as we are transitioning, all our stakeholders across the board, community, labor, and business are actually given comfort in terms of the transition and in the support that they need. Should there be anything they would like or questions they would like to get answers, they are welcome to contact my office. Go to the website. There's a link that will take you through to the division and department that is responsible for the transition, or there is also a direct link to my office that then where the query will then land, and we will respond to you swiftly. Of course, the appeal is that we request business to align and move with us as we move forward. Quality is key, and this is why we are driving this particular process, and we are indeed there to support business in any way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Philen. And actually, if I can have a few words from you, thanks.
Thanks, Kapil, to you and to your audience as well for having us this afternoon. I think I want to end off where I started and indicate that yes, change can be difficult, the change can also be excellent if we focus on what the good outcomes could be. And I think that this move that is happening, the shift that's happening in the landscape, is there not just to be able to address business needs and issues around supply, meeting demand, but then also to ensure that learners who come out of any of the programs that the SETAs offers, well, QCTO offers, obviously can seamlessly integrate into the job market. So it's really important to note that we cannot do this without our stakeholders, we cannot do it without business, we cannot do it without higher education institutions as well. In terms of the MICT SETA, we understand that our programs are transversal, IT is IT and it's required across various fields. And because of that, we've established a 4IR division that focuses specifically on ICT related programs. We are contactable through our website. We've got a special marketing and comms division that is able to assist you in terms of any of the queries that you may have. We also have stakeholder workshops coming up, and we would be partnering with the QCTO. We do it on an annual basis, and the roadshows ideally are going to be run in each of the regions. Please visit our website for the dates. Thanks, Kapil.
Thank you, Natalie. Lastly, Vijay, please can you give us your closing words?
Yeah, no, thanks, Kapil. I think I've spoken enough for today. But Kapil, my closing words is, I mean, we heard the word transition, we heard, a number of terms about change and all of that. And these things, unfortunately, come in a way that disrupts the status quo. And I think certainly it is disrupting the way things have been operating normally. But I think we have to embrace the disruption, because it is not just for the case, because we want to disrupt issues. It is to respond to, as my fellow colleagues have articulated, we need to address the underlying issues in this country, the unemployment, the poverty, the social injustices. And so we believe that as business and industry, together with the SETAs and the QCTO, we have to start to look at all of this more holistically, so that we address these underlying issues. And so, QCTO is looking at everything from the unemployed to the employed, and how do we make provision for that? And certainly we can't do it alone. Let me also just indicate, Kapil, that whatever we put in place is benchmarked. We look at international systems, and QCTO has adopted the policy that we don't look at some system that's minted in another country and we try to implement it here. What we have done in constructing our system is to extract best practice from what we see internationally to bring our systems up to date. And let me just say that the primary driver here is to link education and training with the world of work. Because things are changing so rapidly, we cannot afford another opportunity where you find that our population or our workforce finds themselves, not able to deal with the new skill sets that's required. So yeah, we're developing these new qualifications, but on the side we also have skills programs to upskill and to reskill. And the intention is that we have these qualifications that are ready for when the market requires it. Right now, the practice is we're always looking backwards to develop a qualification. Industry needs something now, and it's only in 3 years' time you're going to get it. I think we need business and industry to come to the table to help us to identify what's the future world of work, so that we start with conceptualizing that, trying to develop the qualifications so that we are, ready when the market or the business moves in that direction. We already have a cohort of learners that are either in the pipeline or, almost graduating to fulfill and uptake those roles. So that's the underlying principle of this entire engagement and process, Kapil. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. And from my side, firstly, thank you to my esteemed panelists. You guys have been very open and honest, transparent in your answers. And thank you to the audience who have been very active in the chat box. And you can see this means a lot to us, right? And when I say us, I'm talking about not the SETAs and not the QCTO, everybody else outside there. And I think maybe a comment from my side is, yes, we're always trying to redress the past. And we never discount our past. But in trying to do that, let's not forget, we need the highest levels of competencies, efficiencies, intellectual abilities, right, and collective collaboration to do that. Saying it is one thing, because we always hear this. We're trying to fix the past and this and so forth. But if you want to do that, we've got to do it with the highest abilities. And we've got to be consistent in what we're doing. And whilst I haven't gone through all the questions here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all these questions to you so that you can analyze them. Some of them, unfortunately, I cannot say out aloud. You can analyze them, and then we're going to come back in the next 30 days, right, for another session, because this is not a complete session. I feel like we need to do more. So we'll do another session, and maybe this time, we could have analyzed some of the questions, and we'll even, ask the guys, the audience who have attended, to post some questions before the event, so we can be prepared and we can have a broader understanding. It's not about answering the questions. It's about educating yourself about what stakeholders are experiencing. So when you come here, you can perhaps canvas yourself positively to the broader audience. So that's what I'd like to do. And once again, thank you all for being awesome panelists, and thanks to the audience for never-ending questions and very exciting questions. And we will have another session within the next 30 days. Have a great day. Cheers. Bye.